Millions of people around the world at the end of 2022 will be making New Year's resolutions. A New Year's resolution's got a long history, by the way, going as far back as Babylonian times. The sad thing is about when people make resolutions here, a vast majority of people tend to lapse, not keep them. And it's fascinating the reasons why people don't keep their New Year's resolutions. There's a lot we can take from that and apply that to ourselves as business owners as to why, when we make resolutions for the year ahead, we tend not to keep them as well. So, hi, folks. My name is Mahmood. I'm a business finance coach, accountant, author of the book I Hate Numbers. And in this presentation, Q&A, chat, conversation, and all the rest of it, I'm going to go through what we can take from New Year's resolutions, what we can do to actually keep them as well, by the way, maintain them, and how we can take elements from that and actually apply it to our business, which I've a particular focus for mine. And I think before we dive in and explore that in more detail, I think it's good to get the little blood circulating on this cold, wet, and damp, certainly in the UK where we are. So let's just get a little bit of music going, and we'll be back in but a few seconds. Welcome back, folks. I hope you like that music. I hope you're feeling okay. Now, if you're just coming up and you catch this on replay, then obviously if you want to put hashtag replay in the comments box, you've got questions or things to share, then I'd love to hear that. And obviously I'll pick up on those comments and reply to them accordingly. If you are listening live, thank you very much for your company today. Just put a comment in the comment box. I should be able to pick it up by the power of technology, and we can obviously respond to them as we go through. If you're sitting back comfortably and you're thinking, how long is this wonderful presentation, conversation, exchange going to go on, Mahmood? Probably about 20 minutes, half an hour. So if you're thinking relevance of New Year's resolutions, most of us will be in that position, no doubt, thinking that we're going to eat more healthily, do more exercise, perhaps give up something, give up smoking or whatever it is your particular, I'll use that word very loosely, vice. Speaking as an ex-smoker as well, it's an enjoyable experience, but I haven't smoked for about 10 plus years. So whatever it is that you choose, it's likely that you'll be in that vast majority of people that by the end of January, it will lapse. By the end of March, you'll be in that big majority of people who will fail to continue on with the resolution here. And I think there's a lot of transferability from that. And we're going to take that into the world of business in terms of why we make resolutions, why we should make resolutions, and more importantly, what is it we can do to actually stick to them and make them a reality as opposed to just something that's occupying the space in our heads. Now, for myself, I'm not going to dwell too much. I'm, as I said, a business finance coach more so these days. I'm an accountant, the founder director of I Hate Numbers and book of the same name, and also founder director of the financial planning platform Numbers Know-How. Now, I think it's always, for me, look at the origins here of New Year's resolutions, and there's something that's quite, I think, quite powerful and quite something insightful that we can take for why people have got into the habit of making resolutions, and why, when we go into the world of business, that's a very transferable idea. Now, I mentioned Babylon. Now, effectively about 4,000 years ago, societies would make promises, make resolutions, and they would do that to the king amateur there at a time, and that's about 4,000 years ago. And obviously for them, if they kept their promises and they resolved to do what they said they were going to do, paying off debts or maintaining their crops here, they'd get rewarded for that. And obviously, heaven forbid, if they didn't keep those promises, those resolutions, then they would be sort of punished accordingly. Now, fast forward a few thousand years, and the concept of New Year's resolutions carried on. And when good old Julius Caesar came into power, seen as a reforming emperor at the time, two things he did. Number one, he first of all changed the year. So you might think that January, beginning of the year, is the time we've always had. Unfortunately not. It used to be around about mid-March, but Julius being the emperor that he was, tinkered around with the calendar and introduced the 1st of January as the beginning of the year. And he's got that wonderful god Janus here. Now, this is not a history lesson, but I thought it was fascinating here in terms of the psyche about resolutions here, and that still lives on today. Now, for those of you who may be aware of Janus, he's classified as the god of beginnings. Obviously, that's the derivation for January. And effectively, there's two faces you can see on the picture in front of you. There's also a key and a spectre or there as well. Now, the two faces, by the way, is because the god of beginnings has two faces, because one looks backwards for the year just gone by, and one looks forward for the year and the time ahead. And that is also something we tend to do in our businesses. We should take a historical review of what has happened, say typically over the last year, and we should think also about what goes through the windscreen of our business, what lies ahead for us as well. The key, by the way, is there because Janus is also the god of protection and protecting us from all wonderful, weird and wonderful things. Now, the whole idea behind New Year's resolutions at that time as well, very similar thing, praying to the gods for protection, praying for the gods for bounty and all the rest of it, and sort of making those promises here. The resolution, but that was more of a societal construct as opposed to an individual thing. Now we fast forward, and religion still has its strong roots, by the way. Let's take Janus out of the picture. And religion still plays its roots. And again, this is not a religious sermon here, but I think religious roots and how things are structured here, there are things that we lose when we go into business that perhaps a religious structure, if you bear with me, also gives us as well. Now, fast forward it about 1740, John Wesley, a Methodist preacher, brought into a concept in terms of night watch services, so they're most commonly called here, where effectively to go away from that sort of raucous celebration of the end of one year, the beginning of a new one here, people would contemplate, reflect, make their declarations to sort of God, and then on that basis here, they would resolve to do things in terms of for the wider good and the wider community. Those night watch services, by the way, they still carry on. They are still very prevalent in mainline Protestant churches, still very relevant in Methodist churches, and very popular in African American churches as well, predominantly because of the Freedom Proclamation back in 1863. I know this is setting a bit of a history lesson here, so that still lives on. Now, nowadays, if we fast forward, the vast majority of people, when they make resolutions, tends to be more of a personal nature. As I said earlier on, whether it's like to give up smoking, to eat more healthily, to actually do more exercise, to perhaps look after themselves, see their family more, whatever it is. I mean, what is it for you? Whatever your resolution will be, there's some common reasons why they do not succeed. And as I said, we're going to take those and we're going to focus on business resolutions, what we can learn from that and how we can apply that and actually put ourselves in a position where we're more likely to keep them. I'm also going to explain why I think you should make resolutions in your business, how you go about them, and again, more importantly, how you should actually go about maintaining them and keeping them. Now, the most popular reasons for not keeping resolutions, it boils down to about 3 or 4. Number one, people tend to forget them. So they're not documented, they don't write them down, they just say them as an aspirational statement, which is fine. But, in terms of if you don't have something documented, if you don't have something in front of you, it becomes very difficult to be accountable to it. And it becomes very difficult to know what it is you said you would actually promise to do. The second popular reason why resolutions are not kept is because by nature, they're not actually very specific. I'm going to have a better diet, I'm going to eat more healthily. And the third reason, we've already mentioned 2 of them, in terms of the forgetfulness, in terms of the documentation, and then we've got the fact is they're not articulated very well either. So those become aspirational statements, and they're not really what we call proper goals, and they're not proper objectives, and there's nothing seen in terms of planning for those, and the mindset is completely wrong as well. So let's now talk a bit more about business resolutions. Now, if we learn from the New Year's resolutions why they don't work, and we can look at that for our businesses, we tend to find quite a lot in common. So first of all, when we come about our own businesses here, it's absolutely critical in my mind is that you have to, first of all, have the right attitude, the right mindset, the right approach. Now, if you are in business, whatever your business is, whatever your why is, whatever your reasoning is, whatever it is you're delivering, whatever the pain points you're trying to solve here, bear in mind, it's a difficult thing. Making money, which has got to be a real big objective, having a sustainable business, being able to deliver what you value, being able to help clients, whatever your motivation is, it's hard work. And I base this on being in business for 28 years nearly, helping thousands of business owners over the years. And, you know, sometimes are good, sometimes are not so good, but it's not a cakewalk. Despite what anybody else might tell you, there are challenges, it becomes difficult, and therefore you need to have the right attitude, you need to have the right belief in yourself, and all those attributes here, and you've got to take your business seriously. And what I mean by that is you've got to be aware that sometimes things will not immediately translate into something beneficial. Sometimes you'll have wins, sometimes you'll have setbacks, sometimes things will not seem to progress too much there as well. You'll be dealing with people of varying shades, of varying characteristics there as well. Some will be positive experiences and some will be slightly more, shall we say, unpleasant experiences here. But that goes with the territory. So having the right attitude, having the right approach in terms of the mindset and your relationship with money, how you see your business forming, remembering that your business is not going to be an overnight success. Overnight successes tend to be typically 20 plus years in the making. Armed with that, you then also need to think about what I call setting goals, setting smart goals. Now, if you have in your sort of personal life saying, I wish to effectively eat more healthily, that in itself is pointless. It's not what's called a SMART goal. Now, SMART, it has various interpretations on it, but in essence, this is how I would like to describe that. If you move that into more of a SMART goal in your personal life, so the SMART mnemonic is being more specific about what it is you're intending to do, make it as a statement of intent, make it a statement of positivity. It's got to be measurable. So you've got to be able to measure that. You've got to be able to quantify it. You've got to be able to recognize that. It's got to be acceptable to you, not somebody else. You're not talking about somebody else's business. You're talking about your own business here. It's got to be relevant. And again, that's relevant to you, to your business, to you as an individual, not to somebody else's. And it's got to be timely. So it's got to be achievable within that time frame you set yourself. So let's look at the personal side first of all. If I set a SMART goal for myself in a personal capacity, I might say, instead of I want to eat more healthily, you might want to articulate that and say, I will lose 1 pound per week with it over the next 3 months. Now that is specific, it's measurable. You can obviously put yourself on the weighing scales. It's acceptable. That might seem, to me, that seems like quite an acceptable target for you as an individual to take on. It's relevant because it's personal to you. Obviously, if your weight is much bigger and you want to drop much more rapidly, you might want to sort of rephrase that. And it's timely. So £1 pound per week over 3 months would seem very relevant. Now, if I translate that into a business context, one of your SMART goals might be to say, instead of I want to make more money, is to say something along the lines of I want to increase my profit by £50,000 over the next 12 months. Now, that £50,000 profit, depending on what profit measure you're taking, is specific. It's there. You can measure it. You know, you can actually calculate the profit that you're making as you progress and the profit that you're making at the end of the time. Is it acceptable to you? Well, it depends on your start point. And this comes in also about the relevance and timeliness as well. If you're at ground zero and you're not generating any value now, you're not generating any profit, you're a startup, it may be that £50,000 is quite a stretch in that 12-month period. If you're already trading as a business and you're already generating a level of profit and you've got things in place to actually achieve that, then that may be something that's acceptable to you, relevant for you. It's relevant and it's timely as well within that 12-month. So make your goals specific. Now, financial objectives are got to be set, financial goals have got to be set, but you may want to set them for other areas. Also, within the idea of SMART, set yourself SMART targets. So if you don't have something to aim for, if you don't have something to aspire to, it becomes very difficult to know, A, whether you've actually achieved anything, and B, monitoring your progress and measuring your progress towards that end target becomes very difficult as well. So again, attitude and approach, be smart in terms of your goal setting, and be smart also in your target setting. The other aspect for me that's really important here is if you have set yourself a goal, if you have set yourself an aspiration, which is SMART, you need to know a route. You need to figure out how you're going to get to that end point there as well. So in a lot of scenarios that I deal with, a lot of clients that I help and build their sort of financial stories, we have an end goal or goals in mind. We then work backwards as to how we're going to arrive at that destination point, what I might call you at that Northern Star. What is the route that we have to go from where we start to get to that end point there as well? What does that route look like? And what that might mean is, and at this stage, it's not about numbers. It's not about saying that this is the figures, I can afford it. It also comes to this idea about attitude and approach, about saying, right, what is it I must do? What is it I must do with my team to go from here to get to the point that I've identified as my end journey point there as well? So we can think about what it means in terms of the skills, what it means in terms of the journey path that we've got to take, what it might mean in terms of people that we have with us and our journey and our passengers that we rely on. What is it that we might require in terms of resources? And then we have to translate that ultimately into what's called a financial outcome. So we know what the financial and other resources will be to get us to that end point there as well. So it's a whole idea about basically plan. If you don't like planning, I can understand work. For some people, it might be considered hard work. Then you're likely to find it more challenging to get to that end point there as well. And for those, if we dip back into the water of New Year's resolutions here, people don't actually set themselves plans. They don't think in terms of, okay, I've said healthier lifestyle. I've said in terms of I'm going to give up X, Y, and Z. So how is it I'm actually going to achieve that? What is my plan? What is it I'm actually going to do? And when it comes to that real sort of how do I do it here, as opposed to the big broad brush here, that's where a lot of people will struggle. Now, there are things you can do to minimize that struggle. There are things you can do to reduce that stress and anxiety. There are things that can be done to make that journey path much smoother, enjoyable as well. So don't look at it as a negative thing. Don't look at it as a drudge. If you're in business and you've got an aspiration point, an objective, a goal, something where you want to get to, and you're not prepared to put in the hard work and you see it as a chore, I suggest that the mindset approach needs to be tweaked here. Instead of looking at that as a bit of a drudgery, try and actually think about the outcomes you're looking for. Try and think about what it is you're trying to achieve here. And everything you invest in terms of time and energy and effort and money and all the rest of it has a positive outcome at the end of it. And if you have that as your terms of reference, as opposed to thinking about the chore of doing it here, your mindset is going to be more liberated. Our brains are hardwired to support us. So therefore, if we go in that with an element of we're doing it for a good reason, that affirmation status here, you're more likely to achieve that as well. Now, it's not going to be happy clappy all the time by any stretch of the imagination, but you've got to have the right things going on up here. And I want to mention that in a bit more detail before we get to the end of this broadcast. So folks, if you just coming on here thinking some of this sounds really good, interesting, I'd add this to it as well. Drop your comments in the comments field, put hashtag replay. I know it's there and I can pick them up and respond to them. So let's summarize where we are so far. We talked about the right approach and attitude. We're talking about being smart in terms of setting goals, setting targets that you have. We've talked about a plan effectively. A goal without a plan is just merely stays as a wish. So we're going to have a plan of some description telling us what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Health is a big factor as well. Now, by health, there is a correlation between how you look after yourself, the biggest primary asset in your business, and how you respond and how you operate in your business as well. One of the biggest factors, and we all take lessons from this, myself especially, is you've got to make sure, for example, you get adequate levels of sleep. And it's not just the levels, it's the quality of sleep that you have as well. There is a massive amount of research out there that talks about those business owners, those individuals who work in businesses, anybody per se, if your sleep is a little bit on the rubbish side, for whatever the reason might be, then you are going to suffer in terms of performance, in terms of mental agility, in terms of the ability to keep going. So not having adequate, proper sleep is a bad thing. Now, it's not the number of hours by any stretch, it's the quality of the sleep. So just some little tips to take on board. Depending on what your crash out time is, your bedtime is, then certainly an hour or so before you go to bed, try and minimize, if not kick to touch, the actual screen time that you spend on your phone. Your brain is going to go a bit crazy and a bit active if you're looking at your phone just before you drop off to sleep here. You've got too much unnecessary activity going on here, so disengage from that. Ideally, if you can wean yourself off that, do it slowly. Put the phone, leave it downstairs. Don't drink alcohol, ideally, and obviously unless you're going on a night out. Obviously, New Year's Eve is probably not the best time to give advice about minimizing the amount of drink you have, but alcohol and sleep don't mix necessarily because you don't get what's called REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement here. Ideally, if you can, maybe go to bed 15-20 minutes earlier than you normally do, but get some good sleep. And the recommendation is typically between about 6 and 8 hours of good quality sleep has a massive impact there as well. Again, if you've got sort of major issues in terms of that, I'm not a doctor. I wouldn't dare to suggest anything there. Get it checked out, but get it seen, but don't just write it off as one of those things itself. Having exercise, I'm not suggesting you necessarily train for a full marathon, but exercise, better diet, but effectively the biggest single asset in your business, that's really the most valuable one, is yourself. And if you don't invest in that, if you don't maintain it, your body is a finely tuned engine. That is the thing that keeps your business going. If you don't look after that, when it goes kaput, your business is going to be slightly buggered as a result. So look after it. So look after your health, look after your well-being, get some good quality sleep, bit of exercise if you can. I said it doesn't mean you have to go to the gym, doesn't mean you have to drink batch urine first thing in the morning, but do something that breaks up the monotony, get away from your desk, whatever it is, but do that as a small routine. Now, the last couple of things I was probably to throw into the mix here about things that we can do to make sure we achieve our business resolutions. Now, when we talk about setting smart goals, try not to overload them. I would say typically as a working rule of thumb, I normally advise clients when I work with them on a one-to-one basis, putting together their financial plans for their businesses, is I would have no more than 3 to 5 top-level goals. Have a personal goal in there, because business owners, what you do in your business impacts on your personal life. So your business will give you that living, that will give you that sustainability and resource that you can have a good, positive personal life as well. So personal and your business goals, again, I would suggest 3 to 5 is pretty much about right. The last couple of things for me is about accountability. Now, in your New Year's resolutions, so I said we're going to get 2 for the price of 1 here. In your New Year's resolutions here, having a support group around you, having those people who are there for you, who understand what you're trying to do, can be really quite powerful. In your business environment, if you are a solopreneur or you're somebody who works largely on their own account, albeit with a team, that can get very lonely and can get very isolating. So having a support group, having a peer network that you can tap into to give you that accountability support is really very powerful. Your Financial story plan, by the way, which I'm a big fan of. So mapping out the route you've got to take to get from A to your end destination point, what that means, the milestones that you have along the way, the metrics, the measures that you have to measure yourself. Those are all accountability tools. Those are really powerful with your biggest accountability document, which is your financial route map. Looking at that, reviewing that, understanding where you are on your journey path, why you may be not on as track as you expected, why you might be falling behind, why you might even be further ahead than you anticipated at that point in the journey, is great feedback and great accountability. So think about the accountability that you get from producing your financial story. Think about the accountability you get from peers in your network. Setting up, little groups with colleagues and acquaintances is more straightforward than you think there is, by the way. But again, make sure you team up with somebody who's familiar, that you can get, who's not going to be a yes person. So families and friends, generally speaking, I would probably countenance against, unless they happen to work with you, because family and friends by nature are going to be there to support you, which is great. But obviously in your business environment, you want somebody who might have some degree of empathy, some degree of understanding about what's going on here. But whatever your choice is, you need accountability. You can make yourself accountable by all means, but that sometimes, be a little bit on the challenging side, to put it mildly. Now, just to coming up to the last thing, what is it the last thing we need to do? And it comes back, I think it resonates with this idea of attitude and approach. Now, in my 28 years of being in business on my own account, going from a back bedroom business to something that's a bit more substantial than that, with a team that helps me, or freelancers and paid staff here, what I found is along the way, you will mess up, you will make mistakes, you will get things wrong. Still occasionally, that little head of failure pops up and says, you thought you got it all sorted, Mahmood. Well, sorry, we're going to throw a spanner in the works. So it happens all the time. And it happens, by the way, more often than you think it does. The key to it, though, is to obviously do things to try and minimize things messing up. So, back getting paid on time, there are things you can do to minimize the likelihood of that going bad. Not effectively making the wrong choices about people you work with, due diligence, trusting people. There are things you can do to try and minimize the likelihood of getting your fingers burned. However, it will happen at some point. And it's how you react to it. And if you see that as a learning opportunity, and again, I'm not encouraging people to make mistakes, I'm saying it happens. It's how you react to it. It's what you've got in place to try and reduce that likelihood of it occurring, how you respond to it, but don't extrapolate that. Messing up today doesn't mean you're going to do the same thing tomorrow. Messing up and making a wrong decision, can feel really quite bad to what's going on up here, but it doesn't mean that should actually extrapolate itself going forward, and that's going to be a permanent endemic thing. All the time we're learning. And again, I've been in business 28 plus years. I'm still learning lots of stuff I can take on board. We don't always listen to our own advice as such, but therefore you've got to make sure you look at your business realistically. Look at it realistic, what it's trying to do. All these things I've talked about will help you along that path there as well. But make sure you're looking after that and you don't dwell on when you get something wrong. There are lots of examples in history, in business, where people have messed up, but that's part of a learning, and that's part of an evolution cycle itself. It happens. It's not to be encouraged necessarily, but again, it's something that doesn't necessarily mean you have to close the door and hide under your duvet forever and ever. Folks, I hope you found some of this useful, if not all of it. Obviously, if you've got any comments to share, tap in the hashtag replay. Again, you've got a 2 for the price of 1 here. You can take things from here, and if you're going to make a New Year's resolution, who knows? Being in that, taking some of these lessons on board about articulating them, how you present what those resolutions are, having a plan, having support, making a note of them, write them down, don't rely on this up here, is more likely that you're going to achieve those resolutions by the end of 2023. And one passing thought. Surveys have suggested, even if you make business resolutions, and even if those business resolutions do not materialize, the very fact you're making resolutions, believe it or not, is actually positive. Obviously, achieving them is even better, but actually go through the process of making a resolution, having a plan, putting things here, and taking action. That's obviously really important there as well. And that in itself actually really, really adds to your well-being and your likelihood of being a better performer in your business. So folks, enjoy the rest of 2022. Whatever you're up to, whatever your personal resolutions will be, whatever your business resolutions will be, I'd love it if you could obviously let me know how you get on with them. Best of wishes for them. I hope 2023 kickstarts yourself off to a fantastic year ahead. So all business owners out there, we know we're reaching and entering a turbulent phase, shall we say, but there are things that can be done. If you want to keep in touch, obviously tap onto the I Hate Numbers video channel. Shall I just do a little bit of a plug here? Let me just add this to the stream. So if you want to check out the I Hate Numbers YouTube channel, join the 2,500 people plus who are subscribers. And I publish weekly videos on a whole wide variety of topics for business owners of varying side. You can reach me through clients at I Hate Numbers. I do a weekly podcast as well as weekly posts. And before I sign off, I'm just going to say, let's have a look. No problem, Edwin. Thank you very much for your company today. For the advice towards making 2023 business and personal resolutions. Edwin, whatever your resolutions are, make a note of them. I hope you achieve them. I hope you do great things and all the rest of it. And enjoy your 2023. And folks, all I would say to you is, I'm not sure glad tidings is the right thing to say, but have a brilliant start to 2023. Keep in touch. I said there's resources galore, video, audio, written, and all the rest of it. And if you feel, oh, actually, there's something you can help us with, drop me a line at clients@ihatenumbers.co.uk and we can have a chat. But apart from that, I'm going to go now. I'm going to finish the work in my office. I'm back in on New Year's Eve, and then I shall be thinking about my resolutions for the year ahead, both in terms of personal, and I've already made my business resolutions anyway. Folks, take care and Happy New Year.